In a relatively short period of time, it certainly seems as if momentum is building for some sort of congressional stock trading ban. And that is without some of the apparent leaders in the Democratic Party really lining up behind the issue. Could that possibly be changing too? Well, joining us now to discuss is the Deputy Washington Bureau Chief for Insider, Dave Levinthal. As always, it is great to have you on.
Hey, great to be with you, John.
So you have a recent piece up talking about the frustration that is growing over the fact that Joe Biden in particular seems like he wants to be very hands-off with this issue, right?
He does, and this doesn't seem like one he wants to touch. Now, Joe Biden has oftentimes told Congress what to do or what not to do in no uncertain terms, but this issue of whether members of Congress should ban themselves from buying and selling stocks was one that he just punted right to Capitol Hill. Now, things have been happening in a very odd, strange, especially by current congressional standards kind of way, where there has been sort of this bipartisan coalescence around the notion of lawmakers just quitting stocks altogether. So, hey, anytime you have a situation where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the left and Josh Hawley, the senator from Missouri on the right, I mean, the guy who pumped his fist in the air in solidarity with the January 6 attackers, they're actually on the same page when it comes to this issue. And it's really made for some odd political cross currents, to say the least, here in Washington, D.C.
Definitely, and I'd like to interrogate some of those. So I don't know if there's been an analysis done. I know that you all over at Insider have been looking into a lot of this, but do you even anecdotally know if there is any correlation between support for the stock trading ban and people who have been relatively or absolutely better in these areas in terms of disclosure of stock trading or whether they own stocks at all? Does there seem to be a thing where the people who are doing the most trading tend to be against this, or are there principled traders who are willing to stop doing that?
So definitely the loudest voices against it, or the skeptics, I think you can fairly say, of a lawmaker stock trade ban. Definitely those are the folks who, you're hearing opposition, people who are active traders, people who day trade stocks or have their stockbrokers do it, at least on their behalf. Now, that's not always the case. There are some members of Congress, and I think probably the biggest example would be Representative Tom Malinowski from New Jersey. We reported about a year ago that he had on dozens and dozens of stock trades that he had made, just simply never reported them publicly as the law requires. Well, he has found religion, so to speak, and has put his money into a blind trust. He is supporting a stock ban. So you do have some examples of that as well, John.
Okay, and I know you spoke to some candidates about this. So in particular, Tom Nelson, of Senate candidate in Wisconsin. What did he have to say about the ongoing debate?
Yeah, well, Tom Nelson is a great example. We've talked to others too all across the country who are not in Washington, D.C., but would like to be in Washington, D.C., Democrats in particular, but also some Republicans who say, look, this is crazy. We should expect a higher standard from our elected representatives. And especially on the Democratic side, Tom Nelson made the point that, well, look, I feel like I've been let down by the leaders of my own party. Nancy Pelosi back in December, of course, kind of famously now said, hey, it's a free market economy. Members of Congress should be able to participate in that and trade stocks. And in essence, the point that he and many of his Democratic colleagues who want to win a seat in Congress are saying is like, no, the American public disagrees, and most Americans do. And polls, John, show that as well, that the vast majority of Americans, regardless of whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, or an independent, say no, lawmakers should not be doing this. We are sending you to Washington, D.C. to operate in the public interest, not in your own personal financial interest. You should be putting us before you put your own pocketbook forward.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I believe that in some of those polls I've seen, Republican voters are actually slightly more likely to want them to not do this stock trading. And some Republicans for some time now have signed on to the idea. There is one thing I want to talk about though. So Biden's saying, I want Congress to decide its own rules. I sort of get that. Pragmatically, they don't want to weigh in. And most of the time, the way that this issue is framed is that this would be a ban on members of Congress, so senators and representatives trading individual stocks, although this sort of ban could come in many forms. But I also know that recently, I don't remember if it was Nancy Pelosi, but someone talking about this said that if we were to do this, they would want this to also apply to members of the judiciary as well as members of the executive branch. So is it becoming more difficult for members of the White House, for Joe Biden himself, to stay out of this when conceivably even he could fall under some sort of ban?
Well, Joe Biden has always been famous for never buying and selling stocks at all during his Senate career. And he made that point when he basically punted this to Congress. But you see something that's really important, and that's the details of this debate. You have a lot of people, again, Republicans and Democrats, who in principle are supporting this idea. But what exactly is it that they're supporting? Do they want to ban members of Congress alone from trading stocks? Do they want to ban spouses of members of Congress from trading stocks? Oftentimes, and Nancy Pelosi is sort of the poster child for this, it's her husband who's making tens and tens of millions of dollars worth of stock trades. Obviously benefits the family of the Pelosis, even if Nancy Pelosi isn't the one who's like hitting her app and making the stock trade. But then it could extend to judges, to members of the Fed. It could extend to senior level congressional staffers too, ostensibly. In our reporting, our Conflicted Congress project that published back in December, we found 182 examples of senior level congressional staffers who had violated the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act of 2012, which at that time, a decade ago, was held up as sort of a panacea for defending against conflicts of interest. Well, we know in reality that many of them just simply ignore it, and that the penalties for ignoring it or for violating it are incredibly minimal and inconsistently applied, if they're applied at all, John.
Yeah, but the fact that at least in theory there are penalties has been used by people who appear to oppose a stock trading ban by saying, hey, we have rules, we can just abide by those rules.
Yeah. Well, the rule, I would just say to that the rules are only as good as the compliance and the enforcement, and the compliance and the enforcement has been, woeful. I think at times you can objectively say, based on the reporting that we've done.
Yeah, and my point is that if the rules don't actually accomplish something, it could almost be worse to have the rules if the presence of ineffective rules is used to stop actual substantive reform from going through. Really fast, so I'm curious, do you know, has there been polling done about, I can guess, but has there been polling done for support for spouses or immediate family members, senior level staff, judges, those sorts of things being included in a ban like this?
The polls have not gotten that granular, but really the state of play at this point is that both on the House and the Senate side, there are active working groups, either at the committee level or otherwise. In the Senate, it's kind of a small group of senators who are studying the best path forward, something that the most people could get behind. So you definitely have some Democrats. Elaine Luria of Virginia, she's a Democrat, came out against it, used a bad word that we cannot use right now to describe what she thought of a ban such as this. And you've had Pete Sessions, a Republican from Texas, also saying very similar things too. So there are, bipartisan support. There's also some bipartisan opposition, and it's really kind of, a both parties and both sides of Congress whipping this issue in a major way to find out who even supports it, and again supports what of all the different options that they have.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we can't use the naughty language here, but if you go to Insider and find all the reporting they've done, perhaps they've listed some of the naughty language there. But anyway, look, as we say every time, it's a really important issue, and we're glad that not only you but others at Insider are keeping laser focused on this, because it looks like there's the possibility that something might be done. So as always, Dave, thank you.
Hey, thank you, John.
Everyone go to Insider, check out the reporting, and I'm sure we'll be talking with Dave again in the future. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.